But I really, really like the Matrix, the way they talk about the waking up. And I think that's going to be really, really nice for leading into our next episode when we start talking about the allegory of the cave and things like that.
Very good. Could you actually bring that quote back up for us, please, if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
And again, that quote, how this relates back to that story that we just read. Have you ever had a dream that you were so sure was real that if you were unable to wake from that dream, how would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world? If you were to wake up and realize the world for what it really is instead of what you've been programmed to believe, how would that change your life and your perspective of the world around you? It's really powerful. We're always looking for a thing to snap us out of our sleep and wake us up and shift our perspective. And just acknowledging the fact that you're asleep is the first step of shifting your perspective and walking out of the cave. The analogy of the cave, and there's so many stories like this. The Matrix. We can go on and on. There's so many analogies that are very similar to this idea of being stuck in a rut, a sheep in the herd, and then stepping out and thinking for yourself, and your life totally being transformed for the better. It's really beautiful.
I've actually got a question for you guys related to this.
Yes, let's do it.
How would you answer that question? How would
Great
you know the
question.
difference between the dream world and the real world? I have an answer, but I would like to hear your guys' first.
I touched a little bit on the idea of Inception being another story that kind of relates to this. And in Inception, they have these objects that they have that spin. And if you spin the object, it will either keep spinning if you're in a dream, or if it's real life, it'll stop and fall over. So I think we try to do things like that in our life every single day. Things that balance the boundary of what's real and what's not. We question those things. And if they follow true in our beliefs, we grab onto that as this must be the real world, the quote unquote real world. But if they don't, if it's fantasy about what is religion and where do we come from and what's life meaning, like what does all this mean, we start to question it. That's like the fantasy of it all. And we start to go, well, maybe this isn't the real world. Maybe we don't really know what the actual real world is. And I think being a human being, our brains are just not capable of being able to understand it all. I think that's part of our experience is that we're only here to experience what we can know for what it is. And then use our judgment to base it on the rest. All of our perspectives of the world are, again, totally different. And it's beautiful. It gives us a beautiful picture instead of all being the same color.
That reminds me of there was a Family Guy episode where Steve thought that nobody could see him. And he went to school and he was convinced nobody could see him. But I mean, that's not really a dream. But if you were in a dream and you couldn't come out of it or whatever, like, I would just embrace it for as long as it was, proceed with caution. I wouldn't do anything crazy, but so many things that we've dreamed about before, we're experiencing now. And, I think it would be fun.
And that's a great point, to be validated and have people see you for what it is. That kind of lets you know also that we're quote unquote in the real world when people are living their experience, but they can still see you for how it is. That's another thing we look for in people is our validation. Hey, look at me. Hey, can you see me? Because it goes back to that story. Yeah, nerdy.
So my answer is going to kind of relate to the allegory of the cave a little bit and the Matrix. And it's going to lead into a little bit of Rick and Morty. So first things first, the way you would tell the difference between a dream world and the real world is in the real world, things are hard. Nothing's easy. If everything's easy going all the time, you're dreaming. Everything's going right, obviously. But just because things are going right doesn't mean it's a dream, but it's a sign. It's one of those flags that because when you wake up, you have to adjust. It's the brightness factor. So being awake is not comfortable. So discomfort, I'd say, is the sign.
Especially the transition to waking up.
Right. So if you are able to feel discomfort, you're probably not dreaming. So that's the real life, the real world. If you're able to feel discomfort. So there was this episode in Rick and Morty that made me think of this. It's the episode where they had the brain worms. It's the Mr. Poopy butthole episode. But there's these brain worms that get into their brains, and then it makes them think that they're actually part of their memories, and they're part of their. But the only the flaw of these brain worms is they can only create positive memories because it's like it's it's like this science fiction creature that its ability is enabling. So it's like this toxic trait that disguises itself as something helpful.
Very metaphorical.
Yeah.
Because so many things do that in our life. Addiction with phones and drugs and porn and everything around us is trying to grab for our attention like that 100%. And they're only based on these positive memories. They're not based on struggle, because a lot of people, that's when they sign up for doing crack or heroin, they don't think about the pain that's going to come with it. They're only thinking about the good that you're immediately going to get 100%, dude.
But also,
100%.
if you're using your phone, you're probably not dreaming, because I thought about it hard. And the only time I had a dream about my phone was like I lost my phone and I was looking for my phone. But you don't sit there in a dream and just scroll and scroll. You know what I mean? That nobody dreams about that. At least I hope not. I don't know anybody that does. But
Yeah, I've heard that.
dream, you're off doing things that normally aren't possible when you're awake.